Thank you. Excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about Ocean Spray, the cranberry industry, and certainly about our tasty little puckers, as we call them. That was a name coming from one of our marketing folks who understood that. My name is Jeff LaFleur, and I'm actually a cranberry farmer as well. I own a 24-acre farm in Plimpton, Massachusetts. Most of my career has been in the trade, representing the cranberry industry in the trade association, doing government affairs, public relations, funding research and such. So I've had a deep understanding of what it takes to ensure the viability of our growers. Became a member of the co-op of Ocean Spray in 2009, served on the board of directors, and then joined the management team in 2019, and currently serve on the senior leadership team in charge of everything on the agricultural part of the company. As our chief human resource officer says, I'm kind of the unicorn of the team because I'm the only grower that actually works for the co-op. So Ocean Spray is an agricultural co-op. We have roughly 700 family farmers from the United States, Canada, and Chile. We are working almost on 100 years of establishment, and we focus on developing products for our consumers and ingredients. There's around over 100 countries worldwide. The co-op is owned by our grower owners, and we're only successful if the co-op is successful. As I say, it's a symbiotic relationship between our growers and the co-op, and so in order for us to be successful, we need our growers to be successful. It is a very unique relationship in the sense that the growers also control the board of directors and hire and fire the management team. So they obviously understand they're making an investment in the company, they're investing their equity, so that they ultimately, all of the proceeds of the co-op come back to our grower owners. It is one of the things that they have a very high standard for, and obviously is very critical to ensure that those proceeds ultimately benefit our own grower owners. Our purpose really is about connecting our farms to families for a better life, and we say this with our values because it is, we have a grower mindset, and meaning that we encourage all of our employees to have that, embrace that farmer-owner mentality, to come at things from the perspective of what it is to be a farmer-owned co-op. We need sustainable results. This isn't a one-and-done thing. We need long-term sustainability focused on our grower owners, ensuring that they can continue to sustain their farms long into the future. We focus on integrity. We want to ensure that our not only what we're doing is ethically, but also what we're doing for our farmer owners, our customers, and each other, and working together collectively as a team to ensure that we're focused on what is in the best effort to strengthen our co-op. Our farmer owners, they trust us to put their cranberries in new products and innovate and to build basically what our consumers want. Last year, we produced over 8 million barrels of cranberries. We represent about 65% of the total cranberry industry. And our cranberry growers are all over from North America, including Canada, and then we have one grower in the country of Chile. We have an interesting demographic of growers. As I said, we have our largest grower is one grower in Chile producing this last year. In fact, 2024 produced 570,000 barrels of cranberries, all the way to some of our smaller producers in Washington State, which produce on about 15 acres. They're producing about 200,000 barrels of cranberries. So you can see one of the interesting challenges for us as a co-op is that we have very different geographies, but we also have very different demographics of growers, from sizes, but also to age demographics as well, which creates a real challenge to deliver what each of these different demographics expects from their co-op. The cranberry industry began in Massachusetts and is some of the oldest producing cranberry bogs. We have about 158 growers there. We're producing just this year, we're expecting about 1.3 million barrels of, but it's also some of our poorer producing acres. So growers have been forced to invest in those farms to renovate them, to try to improve production. Because as you can see, A grower in Massachusetts average yield 163 barrels an acre versus some of our other areas like that Chilean grower is producing 338 barrels per acre. The cost of production per acre is very similar when it comes, but the profitability comes down to yield. So it really does put a challenge for us as a co-op to how we manage those returns back to our growers, because everybody gets the same return per barrel based on the quality of their fruit. And when you look at our demographics of growers, you can see here, really it's very typical of agriculture. 6% of our growers deliver over 53% of the barrels that are delivered to the co-op, and 57% of our growers deliver less than 6% of the barrels. So we have a very large population of small producers across those geographies that really deliver a small part of the fruit, and a large number of our production comes from very few growers. So a critical piece of how we ultimately manage all of that and treat everybody the same, regardless of their production capabilities. One of the things that we've done over the last few years is really doing a pulse on our owners, from our owners, and what is important to them as grower owners. And this really comes down to, no surprise, it's about economics. Profitability. As you can see, the biggest part of why our growers belong to the co-op, number one, stability in price. They want stability in their price, and they're expecting the co-op to deliver that. They want a return per barrel that is sustainable and profitable for them at the farm level. But they're also investing their equity into the brand, and so they expect a value for that, an added value for that equity they invest. And this fourth one is interesting, a home for what we call all of our Exhibit A fruit. Ocean spray contracts are pretty unique. We are not volume contracts, we are acreage contracts, meaning that we take all of the production off of the acre that is under contract with us, regardless if that grower grows 100 barrels an acre or 500 barrels an acre. So this means that as a consumer goods company, we have very limited control over the volume of fruit that's coming in that we have to ultimately turn into products for distribution back out into consumers. So some years we're dealing with, like this year, we're expecting about 8 million barrels again, which is probably more fruit than we really need. And then just even 3 years ago, we were about 6.6 million barrels. So it's a real ebb and flow of volume of fruit that we have to deal with. Pretty unique. But it is very important to our growers of why they are members of the co-op, so they know they can sell 100% of their fruit to Ocean Spray off that acres, and they don't have to go out and peddle it on their own, if you will, to other buyers. The Ocean Spray model is also something that is where I say the growers really control all the way to, from the farm, all the way to the consumer. So we have the receiving stations operations, which bring in the fruit, clean it, prepare it, put it into the freezers, preparing it for manufacturing. Then we provide it out to our distributors and then ultimately into the marketplace for our consumers. So it truly is a farm-to-consumer model for the co-op. Our locations, we are based in Lakeville, Massachusetts, is our corporate headquarters. We do have an office in Boston, Massachusetts as well. And we can see that we do have a lot of offices across the globe to fulfill our international markets. Ocean Spray's manufacturing network is pretty unique. All of our beverage plants are located where the populations are. So we can ship cranberry juice concentrate to our beverage plants and easily then obviously turn them into a beverage and then distribute it to where the population is. Cheaper to move concentrate than it is to move finished product. All of our food plants, meaning the sweet and dried cranberries and cranberry sauce, for example, are where the fruit are. So we are turning raw fruit into a finished product, then distributing it out. So we have facilities across North America, a plant in Quebec, Canada, as well as one in Lanco, Chile. And then our receiving stations are also located, obviously, where the fruit is across that network. When we look at where we are selling, North America is our largest consumer, particularly the United States, followed quickly behind Canada and Europe. But we've grown quite a bit now, selling over 100 countries worldwide. And each one of those countries has different products based upon the palate, if you will, of the consumers in that particular country. Some of the regions that we're seeing the fastest growing right now certainly are Europe, the UK, Australia and New Zealand are also becoming very popular countries for us. But when you look at where our home base is, the United States is certainly one of the critical markets for our industry. Although it's interesting, and we'll talk about it later, there is one state that still eludes us in many ways, and that's California, which can be a country of its own. We see very little cranberry consumption in that region, and that's something that we have been focusing effort on to deal with. The co-op was started in 1930 by 3 growers who joined together to market because they were competitors. And the U.S. government had a mechanism to create a farmer-owned co-op to basically create a monopoly, if you will, to control that. So these 3 growers joined together and started Ocean Spray producing fresh cranberries and also cranberry sauce. So those were the products that really they introduced. The thing that really catapulted cranberry juice consumption was the introduction of cran apple juice in the 1960s. It was really the product that was like, when cranberry juice was first introduced, it really wasn't a palatable product that consumers would seek after. So it was really the introduction of adding other fruits to that made it more palatable, and thus a consumer product that started to develop. So cran apple juice in the 1960s was a critical piece. The next introduction that was major was introduction of sweetened dried cranberries in the 1990s. And that really has become the mainstay, in fact, where majority of our cranberries now go. And then the byproduct out of that goes to production of other products. The piece that has been really interesting here is that craisins, what we call sweetened dried cranberries, used to be actually a byproduct that was disposed of. It was the skins left out after taking the juice out of it. We have now reconstituted those skins with sweetened juice and dried them and created what we call now the craisin. There's been a lot of expansion over the years, and certainly introduction of new products as well as new markets during that time period. Certainly we're continuing to expand through that in the 2020s. We're introducing some new products, which I'll share with you in a minute. But one of the things that certainly was a major boost for us from a juice consumption piece, as well as I think for many berries, was the time during COVID. Many of you may remember, if you recall, it was an internet sensation of a guy who was drinking cranberry juice while skating on a skateboard, and his name was called Dogface. And it was absolutely amazing how that video took off and became a sensation. He was drinking cran raspberry juice. We literally saw cran raspberry juice consumption increase tremendously over the weeks following the introduction of that video, almost 4 years ago here, coming up in September. The berry itself is pretty versatile. We freeze all of our fruit that go into the manufacturing process. That ultimately results in large amounts of freezer space. We put our fruit in a 13 barrel, a barrel weighs 100 pounds with a way, 13 barrel bin. Us at Ocean Spray, we have 660,000 of these bins that we fill during harvest season and put into freezers. Then that goes into making sweetened dried cranberries with those hulls and ultimately press cake that comes out of that to make sauce. So about 95% of our product is ultimately processed. Right? It's making sweetened dried cranberries, cranberry juice concentrate. A very small amount of our fruit is fresh cranberries sold in the plastic bags, either the 2-pound gusset bag that we now produce or a 12-ounce plastic bag that is sold across North America. So fresh cranberries are packaged immediately during harvest and sold during the holiday season. That's a majority of when that product is, whereas sweetened dried cranberries, cranberry sauce, and obviously juice products are available year-round in markets around the world. When you look at some of the things that our growers expect from us, they're expecting innovation of new products. And this has always been something that Ocean Spray's been really heavily focused on. This, certainly our core business has been juice and sauce and dried cranberries. So we've worked on those, but one of the things that we've been also doing, sometimes you'll see in the marketplace Ocean Spray blueberries or Ocean Spray citrus. We actually license that with Oppenheimer. Oppie is actually our distributor of fresh cranberries, and the reason why we did that license agreement was to really expand us into the fresh fruit part of the store to help ultimately drive awareness for our fresh cranberry business. One of the new products we introduced under licensing as well with Pernod Ricard is Cranberry Absolute, a ready-to-drink product, which we'll talk about. And of course, food service is another area where we've got huge opportunity to continue to expand. This year, we've introduced zero sugar products, light sugar, and we're also been doing some time-limited products like the cranberry raspberry lemonade. It's available now. Dragon fruit was only available through Amazon. And then this fall, we're going to have a blackberry mulled cider product that will be available. It's all about delivering the right product, the right size, the right price, which is a real challenge in many cases, particularly because as we've come through COVID, we've seen the business change tremendously. We produce bottles, this 3-liter bottle with a jug. Prior to COVID, we were ready to shut that line down because we were not selling enough to justify it. Now we can't produce enough of it. Consumers have went right to the multi-serve product. The next area now that we're seeing, we just, in fact, launched a new line, just opened in Kenosha, Wisconsin for us, is single serve and a multi-pack. So the single serve 10-ounce juice product for those now on the go, as people have gone back out into doing and being active, has been a focus. So it's been a real challenge for us, and very quick changes in consumer preferences have really forced us to change a lot in our manufacturing. And also flavors. Introducing new flavors is not just the regular cranberry, but also cranberry with a little chili, lime and chili, cranberry blueberry, cranberry with cherry, and certainly some other flavors that have allowed us to expand consumers of products around the world. New products, we introduced zero sugar this year, and this is a good example of something that we hear quite frequently, right? We have to add sugar to cranberries to make them palatable. And so consumers, there's a negative stigma about having added sugar. So one of the things that our innovation team has worked on is saying, how can we really need to introduce a zero sugar. And this product has taken off for us this year, and now we're seeing competitors out there, like you may have seen Tropicana's now introduced a zero sugar orange juice product as well. So this is sweetened with stevia, and we're seeing that it really hasn't cannibalized our core cranberry juice consumption. It's actually added on new consumers that were not previously consuming cranberries because of that perception of added sugar. So this is an example of something we launched this year. Another new product that we just launched under a new brand, which is very difficult to do, is Revel Fruits. And the reason why we introduced Revel Fruits is because, as I mentioned earlier, we were trying to go after some consumers in California that weren't necessarily going after Ocean Spray, but they wanted a different product. So we put a different product that is sweetened with coconut water as a carrier and a Tetra Pak, which is recyclable. And for the first time ever, Ocean Spray is this is being picked up and carried by Whole Foods. And Ocean Spray, Whole Foods would not take Ocean Spray because they thought it was too big of a corporation, even though we're a farmer-owned co-op. So Revel Fruits is a new product that we just launched this year that really is taking off with that very specific demographic. So we're very hopeful that it is going to take off. Ironically, the one variety that is having the biggest challenge is the boldly cranberry one. So we've gone through a reformulation with that one to try to change the taste of that for some of the palates. This is another one that is available on Amazon. When we say the perfect marriage, right, everybody, when I talk to people about cranberries, they always say, well, I always add vodka to mine, or I always add some other adult beverage to mine, right? And so it was sort of interesting that when our current chief commercial officer came in, she said, how come Ocean Spray doesn't make a vodka cranberry product ready to drink? And this really became a passion of hers in the last 2 years. And we were very fortunate to develop a partnership with Absolute here. And it has quickly grown to be the #2 ready-to-drink product, a new launch in the United States. It is soon coming to Canada, so we're excited about that continued expansion as we begin to grow beyond that. But in this particular product, the interesting thing here, it's a licensing agreement so they can use our logo, and we sell them cranberry juice concentrates. So it's not something that we make. Pernod Ricard makes the product, and actually it's made in Canada, and they're building a new facility in Arkansas to expand its use. So cranberry vodka, cran grape, cran pineapple, cran raspberry. I will tell you there's 2 new flavors coming for those of you who are is cran peach and cran mango. That will be coming next year. Now, not all of our products are successes, all right? And this is always something with innovation that a lot of them don't necessarily work. Cranberry juice and coffee. Doesn't that sound like a great combination? So Cran Brew was a product that was introduced before COVID. It had a very short lifespan. As I say, it's in the graveyard now. Its time was it was just not the product to bring excitement to the area. We had some innovation that was working on flavor enhancements for dog water. Again, something that was sort of like out there. Packed water. Water was sort of an interesting option for us because we were trying to put the goodness of proanthocyanins in water from cranberries, and it had an opportunity, but here's one of the challenges. You all know what packs are, obviously, but the average consumer has no idea. So to try to then re-educate or try to educate consumers about what packs were really became ultimately the death of that product, and we took it out. So some of these products are things that we've worked on and tried. We'll end up shifting in some ways and trying to go in a little different area with some of these things. I don't think you're going to see cranberry coffee back, so those of you who may be disappointed on that. The other big area for Ocean Spray really is our ingredients business. Cranberries are a very product that is very versatile and can be used in so many areas. So baking, dairy, chocolate confections, appetizers, cereal, snacking, smoothies, beverage salads. So the ingredients business is something that is not only here in the United States, but also something we focus on internationally. One of the areas we've been really spending a lot more time on, instead of trying to, we've really been focused on is working with other manufacturers in working on how can they incorporate cranberry in to help solve some of their problems. I'll give you a great example. I know those of you who do blueberries aren't necessarily excited about this, but we can make our cranberries taste like blueberries, right? And so the advantage here is a company like Dunkin' Donuts, who makes muffins and makes bagels, was trying to use blueberries, but the blueberries, when they were baked, bled into the dough, and they didn't like that. But the blueberry-flavored craisins did not bleed into the dough. So if you go to Dunkin' Donuts and you buy a blueberry bagel, you're eating cranberries that are in there. And that's oftentimes a lot with things like granola bars, et cetera, that sometimes they were adding in there. So we look at ourselves as being a solution provider as well for some of these companies to help them deliver the products that consumers are wanting. So ingredient business has been a big piece of that for us as well. So this has been one area that we see a lot more opportunities. And this is a shift for us, honestly. In the past, the ingredient business was almost like a safety valve outlet for excess product outside of our branded business. We've now created the ingredient business as its own corporate business to really focus on growing that piece of this beyond our brand. When it comes to our growers, we've got to grow our growers as well. And this is something I'm particularly proud of is I wanted to create OS Academy really to develop the future leaders, not only of the co-op, but for the cranberry industry, for agriculture and local communities. So we created the OS Academy to help develop those leaders and the next generation of cranberry growers. So this year we have 40 growers enrolled in the program, and this program was something that helps them. We provide them information on what it's like to be a member of the co-op, all of the information on the co-op, but also things that help develop them personally. One of my favorite courses that we created was a program on negotiation. So we had one of our salespeople teach this. How do you negotiate? How do you negotiate with a supplier? How do you negotiate with a buyer of your product, of something like that? But one of the most unintended consequences came from the next generation when they asked the question, how do I negotiate with mom and dad? Because they were going to be the next ones taking over the farm. So all of a sudden we found ourselves in an interesting predicament is that we now have to go into this whole thing of generational transfer. which when you think about it is such a critical piece of ultimately the long-term survival of any farm. So negotiation classes really come into something that is now discussed at the Thanksgiving and holiday tables. So Ocean Spray Academy has been a great program for us as we are now reached many graduates, and we're seeing many new people come into this, both existing growers that have been in for many generations, but also the next generation that's come in. So pretty excited about that. And to my favorite part now, Q&A. I love questions, so if you've got any questions, we're happy to take them. No, it's a great question, because you're exactly right. We do produce a lot of plastic. One of the things that we have introduced, and you haven't seen it in the marketplace yet, is we're changing the 64-ounce bottle. The 64-ounce bottle is the largest package, most popular package of our juice. So we're switching to what we call the Super Dome. We actually change the shape of it. Again, have to study the consumer, right, and determine, okay, you change the shape of something they're so used to buying, are they going to recognize it? And we're actually reducing the plastic like 20% in that. So we're in the process of launching that now. But also the other area where we see, as I mentioned with Rebel Fruits, is Tetra packaging and trying to produce a recyclable product that way. Obviously, we're encouraging recycling, but as I think you all know, a lot of communities don't necessarily have the recycling fully integrated yet and available to them. So it is an area that we are focusing a lot on because we do go through a lot of plastic. Yep. Go right ahead.
So what about some of the single-serve snacks, like the snack boxes you can buy at Costco?
Yep. So we do single serve in a box, almost like the how do you say, raisins box. And so that's a cardboard box, for example. That is one of the packages there we do for Costco and snacking as well. One of the interesting challenges, we're looking at going to a resealable container, getting away from a plastic bag for raisins. The challenge that's becoming maintaining the freshness. That is right, because you want the consumer experience to be the same from the first time they open it to the last craisin they take out of the package. That's a challenge. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at is, changing, introducing that canister that is allowed resealable like that instead of the plastic bag.
Thank you. So you show us the new juice with 0 sugar. Is that also going to come for the sweet and dry cranberry?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the weight of a sweetened dried cranberry is sugar. So when you start removing sugar, what are you going to substitute it with? And that is actually one of the challenges we're dealing with. Some producers have been using a cornstarch in that as a bulking agent, if you will, because once you dry it, take out the juice, you need something to bulk that cranberry back up. But we are looking at we do have a reduced sugar product, and we have been looking, and we are testing a 0 sugar sweetened dried cranberry as well. Yep. Do you want to call on them, or should I? I don't.
Yeah, that's good.
Go ahead, sir. That was a real concern of ours, is, Ocean Spray is, and the question was, switching from a healthy product, cranberry juice, but do you know what about half of our cranberry juice purchases are for? To add an adult beverage to them. So it ultimately came a very easy transition that you've got consumers that are buying it for a healthy product. So we do make 100% cranberry juice product called Pure. It is a pure cranberry juice, unsweetened, that some people will buy and use to make smoothies and so forth. We have not seen the impact on it from a health perspective of switching to the absolute. We actually met an untapped consumer demand. What do you have here?
Do you see any future in a hybrid berry intersectional that changes cultural practices, possibly for the berry?
Yeah, I think this, up until 20 years ago, most of the cranberry varieties that were planted, the Stevens, as was mentioned, Amelia mentioned, for about 60% of the planted acres in Wisconsin, inclusive of Independence, is Stevens. Still the main variety. That was from the 1940s. So today we've got new varieties that have been introduced by University of Wisconsin, Rutgers University, and some private breeders that have been focusing on yield, on some very specific characteristics that are important for us in manufacturing. So firmness, size, color, uniformity of color. The researchers are really focused on what's next when it comes to producing varieties that can help us deal with climate change, particularly with fruit quality. Excess rain, excess heat, etc. So those have been the areas. The next area that we're seeing, we've had some producers working on is, can you make a naturally sweet cranberry? Reduce the acid in somewhat. So there's some in that area as well. But that has not taken off yet. And this may be something for us as an industry we're going to look at, because we pay our producers on yield. So until we switch that model and maybe pay on some other characteristics, that may encourage more planting of some of these newer varieties if they become successful. Yes, sir. Yeah, particularly in Massachusetts, it's a challenge, and it comes down to the yield. We do represent a lot of small producers, as you saw in that chart. And I think a lot of them feel like it's a home, it's a safe home, if you will, for them to be a small producer and be in Ocean Spray. Because if out on the private market, if you will, the buyer may be going after a very large grower because they know they have to deal with one producer, whereas I've got 700 growers I'm working with. So it is something that is a real concern for us in some regions. And it's interesting that one of the things we're seeing is that, particularly with fresh fruit, you've got an aging demographic. So how do you convince that next generation to stay in? Ultimately, it comes down, it's profitability, it's economics. So it's a way of life. As I always say, growers do things. It's not always about what's on the balance sheet. It's about a way of life, for one thing. You have to have it in your blood. But then, two, you got to make money at it, right? You got to be profitable. And so some of our growers have really been challenged at because they just don't have the yields to sustain themselves long term. So we've lost some growers, absolutely, particularly in Massachusetts. We've seen some growers go out. But it's interesting when I travel around the country and you see this, when I go to every region. We just did this 3 weeks ago. We went to every single growing region. Massachusetts had a very aging demographic. I went to Quebec. It was a very young demographic. I went to Wisconsin, a very young demographic. So there are certainly areas that we're seeing those next generation come on, which was part of why we wanted to do OS Academy as well, was try to encourage that. Unfortunately, we are going to lose some. We are. And some of it is, it's the reality of not investing in the farms for longer term, improving, changing the varieties and planting new hybrids, et cetera, that yield more. Way in the back, way in the back. Yeah, we produce about 8 million barrels of cranberries. I probably produce, between purchasing non-patronage fruit, that means outside the co-op, is what we have in the co-op is 100 to 200,000 barrels of organic. Organic is becoming, we source all of our organic fruit from Eastern Canada, but we're finding that, and the people in this room know better than I, it's becoming extremely difficult on organic production. As we've seen climate change, but we're seeing some of the pest populations move north, particularly from established regions like Massachusetts. For the first time this year, Ocean Spray actually owns a farm in New Brunswick, and the grower had sent down some pictures and said, I've never seen this before. The berry was completely eaten out, and I knew exactly what it was. It was Sparganothus fruitworm. We had never seen that on the farm before. And so now we are seeing this change. And it's going to be very interesting to see, ultimately see what happens with organic production on a widespread. There's local pockets that I think will be successful, especially remote, but we're not seeing that. The other interesting piece with organic is, will the consumer pay for it? And on fresh produce, you see that, but not necessarily the difference on processed products, sweet dried cranberries or juice products. But all right. I'm standing in the way of lunch. How much cranberry juice is in cran? So regular cranberry juice cocktail is 27% cranberry. So in cran apple, you're looking at about 10. So it's much less cranberry juice. So if you want, a lot of the health research studies were based on the 27% cranberry juice cocktail product. In fact, the original UTI studies done by Harvard University in the 90s were all based on 27%. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So the question was, do some of the cranberry varieties, can they be marketed, grown and marketed for their high anthocyanins, for the health benefits? Yep. Yep. It's interesting. We have about 100 different varieties of cranberries. The average consumer has no clue that there are that many varieties of cranberries because we don't market it that way, like apples or certainly other places that market by variety. We've been doing the research, though, to really show varieties like early black, frankly, even Mullica Queen, have very high anthocyanins. We're not at a point yet to differentiate that in the marketplace, but that is an area that we've been working on, looking at and saying, could you do that? Could you market an early black cranberry juice with very high anthocyanin content for the health benefits, to your point?